All right, welcome back. It's the afternoon of Tuesday, July 27th, and we are going to reconvene our Monterey County Board of Supervisors meeting. For anyone who's joining us on Facebook or YouTube, you're also welcome to hop on over and join us on our Zoom webinar at webinar ID 224-397-747. Could we get a roll call from the clerk, please?
Good morning. Good afternoon. Let the record reflect all supervisors are present, with Supervisors Alejo and Lopez appearing via video conference and Supervisors Askew, Adams, and Phillips appearing in person.
Wonderful. And we have Spanish interpretation services available here in chambers as well as on Zoom for anyone who would prefer to participate in Spanish. Could we get an announcement of that, please?
Buenas tardes, Jocelyn Martínez, intérprete español. Se les anuncia que tenemos interpretación disponible para su comentario en español. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Our first item this afternoon is item number 15. It is a public hearing to consider remodel 531 square feet studio addition, conversion of an attached garage to habitable space, construction of a new 447 square foot 2-car carport, new cedar fence, refinish an existing chimney with a tan caramel stone, add a metal flue cap and spark arrestor, and after the fact approval to paint the single family residence a white Swiss coffee, and an after the fact relocation in height increase to a previously permitted 120 square foot shed. We have a brief presentation today from Eric Lundquist, Director of Housing and Community Development, with Craig Spencer and Phil Angelo here today. We'll pass the microphone over. Thank you.
I'll actually be, here we are, loud and clear. I'm going to introduce Assistant Planner Phil Angelo, who will be doing the presentation. Thank you.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm Phil Angelo, Assistant Planner with HCD Planning, and I'll be presenting staff's report on the Schwartz Mall project, PLN 200192. Yesterday morning, staff received updated plans from the applicant's representatives and correspondence from the appellant indicating that they would support the project as revised in those updated plans. An errata memo with this updated plan set has been transmitted for the board's consideration, along with an updated resolution reflecting staff's recommendation of approval for the revised plans. And staff's presentation on the project today is based on those plans. The project is located at 24980 Outlook Drive in the Carmel Valley Master Plan, and the project is a design approval to amend a previously approved permit, PLN 170572, which is for the remodel and in addition to an existing single-family home. PLN 170572 permitted a 350 square foot studio addition and refinishing of the home with brown siding and a chimney finish of ceramic tile. And the revised project, PLN 200192, would increase the size of this addition to 530 square feet, add remodel scope to convert the garage to habitable space, and add a 2-car carport and a cedar fence to the project scope. The home was also previously painted white. A flue cap was added to the chimney, and the chimney refinished with white stucco without the benefit of permit. So retroactive approval to paint the home white and approval to reduce the height of the chimney and either keep the current stucco or refinish it with Carmel stone are incorporated, which would address all of the previously unpermitted work. The project was initialized as an administrative design approval. However, 2 requests were received to refer it to a public hearing, so it was heard by the zoning administrator. At a public hearing on May 13th, the zoning administrator approved the project. At that hearing, the applicant's team indicated that the height of an existing backyard shed was taller than it was originally permitted. It's installed at about 13 feet when it was permitted at 8. As that shed was installed higher than its originally approved permit, this is a violation of the conditions of approval for the permit. To address that, the zoning administrator included a project condition that the applicant seek separate entitlements for or remove that shed prior to the issuance of building permits. However, the inclusion of a condition doesn't alone address the violation. So a separate design approval request, DA 210122, to modify the shed to reduce it from its existing height to about 10 feet is also presented to the board for their consideration today. And approval of that permit would address that violation, and there would be no other zoning violations on the property. All existing and proposed uses are allowable under the base LER zoning, which permits the first single-family home, including the studio addition and the garage space that's being converted, and detached structures like carports and sheds. The project conforms to all the site and development standards established by the zoning ordinance. One notable exception is utilized for the garage conversion scope, which is going to be this area on the west here. A portion of this is in this east side setback. However, this exterior work is limited to the addition of 3 window openings and the replacement of an existing door. So this falls under the category of repairs, and it doesn't increase the nonconformity, which is allowable under the zoning ordinance. Materials and colors were selected to be compatible with the neighborhood and the buildings and natural and man-made surroundings. The white is a neutral tone, and the potential caramel stone for the chimney and cedar for the carport and the fence are both natural in tones. The bulk and the mass of the structures is controlled to retain appropriate scale for the area, and they're located in a way to minimize disruption of views for existing homes. The shed was previously permitted at 8 feet, so the increase in height is limited to 2.5 feet and is well below or below the height limit for accessory structures. And the studio addition is limited to a single story and is lower than it was previously permitted in PLN 170572. The appellant raised several contentions regarding the zoning administrator's approval. However, in a letter dated July 26, 2021, they indicated that they would support the project with the revised plan set that was submitted yesterday and transmitted with that errata. Since that errata was distributed, both the appellant and the applicant have submitted some minor technical edits to the proposed resolution, and staff has reviewed those and believes that they would be acceptable to include in the resolution. So should the board desire, they may make a motion to adopt the resolution with those proposed revisions. And I believe that they've been added to the dais. And with that, staff's recommendation is that the board find that the project qualifies as a categorical exemption under CEQA, partially grant an appeal challenging the zoning administrator's approval, specifically related to the permit being granted while the existing shed violation existed on the property, approve design approvals, PLN 170572 and DA 210122 with the revised plan set submitted yesterday. And that concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available for questions.
Thank you for the presentation and for your work on this. We will give our applicant the opportunity to speak. We typically allow 10 minutes for each applicant and appellant. So
we'll be very brief.
Great.
I'm Mal Schwartz, and I live full-time at 24980 Outlook Drive.
And I'm his wife, Laura Tryon. I live at the same address permanently.
And we just wanted to really take a moment to thank the staff for all the hard work involved in this, whatever it is you call what's been going on. So we want to thank you for your hard work. We want to thank the Board of Supervisors for considering us. We know it's been a little challenge to keep track of all the busy and dizzying things that have been going on, but we truly appreciate it and hope that you'll grant us approval for our project today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is John Bridges. I represent Mal and Laura. And I too would like to thank and commend your staff to you, Eric and Philip. In my 35 plus years, seldom have I seen such responsiveness. Philip's really been outstanding. His analytical dive into the weeds and really making it understandable, because it's got a complicated past. And it may seem like there's a lot of paper there, but at the end of the day, the beauty is that we are here collectively with the appellant, and the plans have been revised and everybody is in agreement. Staff is on board with that, and we hope that you will be as well, and that you will adopt the resolution that was submitted in the errata this morning and this afternoon. With respect to the changes, I know Ms. Kemp is going to address those. We are in agreement with those. The lion's share of those are simply about clarifying that the new chimney flue cap won't be on the top, will not be on the top. That's an important aspect for her client, and we're here to confirm that. We do ask that you would take final action and approve today, consistent with staff's recommendation to incorporate the minor clarifications that Ms. Kemp is going to present. And I thank you again. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to try to answer them. I appreciate your time.
Great, thank you. Christine Kemp, did you want to take a few minutes?
Sure. I'm here on behalf of the appellant, Rob Kahn. This has been a trying time for everyone involved, and we are very happy to have reached an agreement that addresses Mr. Kahn's concerns, and we appreciate the efforts that have been made by everyone to get there. I put on your dais an email that came from myself as well as John Bridges, correcting just a couple of minor things in the resolution. I've gone over them with staff, and they agree as well. One overall change is that it's a detached garage rather than or carport rather than an attached carport. So that just needs to be changed throughout. As on finding one on evidence number 5 on page 5, as John pointed out, we just wanted to nowhere does it really discuss where this termination cap for the chimney is going to be located. And we just wanted to clarify that the cap will not be located at the top of the reduced chimney, because a lot of this was about bringing that chimney down and out of the view. And so we want to make sure the cap doesn't interfere with that. And page 10 on finding 4, evidence F, it just didn't make sense because I think it's a holdover from the prior resolution where it spoke about that the chimney was unchanged. So the location of flue cap would be appropriate on the existing chimney. That doesn't make sense now because the flue cap's not going to be there. So we changed it just to say that the location of the chimney is unchanged with the chimney height reduced to it's basically elevation 111 feet 0 inches, and the flue cap is removed. The same on page 12 in the discussion. We're just again reiterating that the applicant has modified their request to include a reduction in the chimney height, and we added the 111-0. Actually, I have a typo on my email, but it's 111 feet elevation and 0 inches, and remove the top flue cap and spark arrestor and install a new termination cap that's not located on the top of the chimney. Again, the same on your approval on page 21 on item C, just 2 changes there. One is indicating that they're reducing the height of the chimney elevation, and I didn't have that in yellow, sorry, to elevation 111 feet 11 inches, 0 inches. And then also, I did catch that detached versus attached. And then in your conditions of approval, it had a carryover from the zoning administrator's resolution, and that needs to be revised to reflect the resolution that you adopt today and today's date. The staff errata memo was somewhat irrelevant, but I just wanted to point out that for the shed, the skylights in the upper windows of the existing shed have been removed, and the height of the shed has been reduced to 9 feet. It's a little confusing between 9 and 10 feet. It's 10 feet when you measure it from the ground. There's a foundation board that's shed, so it's 9 feet from the top of that foundation board. So with those changes, we also ask that you take action today. It's important to get this behind us for everyone and approve the plans as submitted, revised as submitted, and with the revisions to the resolution that we've just walked through. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them as well. And again, we thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, any questions or comments on this item? Supervisor Adams.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. I think it's always a shame when neighbors get into disputes like this and it has to come to the Board of Supervisors. But I have two things that I want to say. And one is that I think, Mr. Schwartz, your approach to this has just been so balanced and even and patient. And I really appreciate your comment about the staff that you had the privilege of working with, because we too see that we've got some terrific people who work here for Monterey County. And I'm very thankful that they were engaged with this whole process, because I believe that that's one of the points of how you've come to resolution for everything today. And when it's appropriate, Madam Chair, I would like to be able to move that we adopt the revised resolution today.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Adams. Any other comments or questions from the board? Let's take this out to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? And we are at item number 15, our first item on the afternoon open session. I'm seeing no public comment. So close public comment, bring it back to the board. And I think there was a motion.
You make the motion?
I did.
Second.
But we have a motion and a second. And just to be very clear, the motion is to adopt the revised, adopt the staff recommendation with the revised plan sets and minor revisions as read into the record and submitted in writing yesterday. Is that accurate? Yep. Okay. We'll take a roll call vote. Thank you.
Supervisor Alejo.
Aye.
Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
Supervisor Lopez.
Aye.
Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
And Chair Supervisor Askew.
Aye. Thank you. And big thanks to the team who worked to bring to resolution so that everyone can move forward. Thank you all for being here in person today. And Phil, welcome to Chambers. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have item number 16, which is to approve district appointments to the 2021 Advisory Redistricting Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2021. We have a brief presentation from Rosemary Soto. Do we have Rosemary on the line? We do. Hi, Rosemary.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. I will go ahead and share my screen for a brief presentation and update. With this item that I bring to you this afternoon is to request the approval and appointment of the 2021 Redistricting Commission for Monterey County. To date, as of the solicitation period began June 2nd to July 19th, 2021. We had a total of 58 applications that were received, and our selection process included a review and confirmation of voter registration, which was conducted by county staff. And then we also handed over all of the applications that were received to each supervisor for their district. And supervisors at that point then selected the top 3 appointees for to represent their district. And so here is the slate that you see here on the right-hand side of your screen for districts 1 through 5. And so this is the makeup of the 2021 Advisory Redistricting Commission. So at this point, we just seek board action to approve district appointments for a term that would end on December 31st of this year. If there are any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Soto. Colleagues, any questions, comments about the appointments of the Advisory Redistricting Commission? Right, is there any public comment about, we're on item number 16, our district advisory redistricting commission. Any public comment? Seeing none, I will thank all, was it 52 applicants who took the time to complete, 58 applicants who took the time to complete the application process. I know it was a fairly comprehensive application, but we did review every application that was received into our office, and want to just appreciate the willingness to serve the community. I'd be happy to entertain action on this.
I'll move that we approve this list of commissioners for our redistricting commission.
We have a motion.
Yes, that was my motion, Madam Chair. And if I could just add, I just want to also say that this list is a good mix in terms of racial, ethnic diversity, and also almost 50-50 split on gender of men and women. So I think it's a good mix of folks. So I want to join you in thanking everyone who applied and expressed interest in and participating on this commission, which will have lasting. We'll do a lot of important work for the next 10 years in Monterey County.
Great, thank you. So we have a motion. Is there a second? Is there a substitute motion? Should we offer everyone some coffee for the afternoon to keep us going? All right, so just to remind everyone where we're at, we're on item number 16. We're approving our district appointments to the 2021 Advisory Redistricting Commission. Ms. Soto has presented us with 3 appointees for each current district, and we have a motion to approve those appointees from Supervisor Alejo. We're looking for a second. Okay. We've got a second from Supervisor Lopez. We'll take a roll call. We went out to public comment already. We'll take a roll call vote. Thank you.
Supervisor Alejo.
Aye.
Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
Supervisor Lopez.
Aye.
Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
And Chair Supervisor Root Askew.
Aye, and I'll, with that, the motion is approved. Thank you to the 15 individuals who've been appointed to serve on the Redistricting Advisory Commission. I encourage other individuals who applied and who are in the community. These meetings will be, I believe, open to the public, and we would appreciate and encourage you to remain engaged in the process as these as recommendations are developed. So with that, we'll move on to item number 17 today. And thank you, Rosemary. Okay, item number 17 was removed from the agenda, so we'll move on to item number 18. Item number 18 is to receive an update on the expenditure report through June 30th, 2021, and proposed right-sizing process for the virus integrated distribution of aid, the VITA project, formerly known as the Community Education and Outreach Pilot Project. And I believe we have a presentation from Rosemary.
Thank you, Supervisor. That didn't give me enough time to change my screen for a different project. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, thank you once again for the opportunity to bring an update on the VITA project, which is formerly known as the Community Health Worker project, which is in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. As you're aware, this project was funded by the Board of Supervisors in December of 2020, and it is a partnership in its development, launch, and administration by the county's Administrative Office, Health Department, and the Community Foundation for Monterey County. I'm going to go ahead and introduce my colleague, Krista Hani, who's going to share out details of the data that we have for services provided or the outreach that was conducted through the months of May and June. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Krista at this point.
Thank you, Rosemary, Chair Askew, supervisors and staff. Last time we presented to you, we gave you data from February and April, so we'll focus more on May and June right now for the data update for you, but we continued with all of our efforts around COVID-19 messaging, linking people to resources, especially through isolation and quarantine, really trying to address needs to help people isolate and quarantine successfully, helped in a wide variety of ways around vaccine uptake through providing information, registration information, and helping clinics or hosting clinics. And also got into doing testing. A number of the CHWs have been certified by the state with the assistance of and all the hard efforts by Kim Stemler through the COVID Collaborative and Community Foundation. So overall, since February, 217,000 interactions. So essentially interacting with people, getting information out there. People might be interacted with more than one time in that 217,000 over the several months. Next. Ongoing effort, though, you can see here as the sort of community outreach efforts as a percentage of the population. And in regards to the overall test positivity rate in the county over the past 7 days. And generally we saw a growing increase in the outreach efforts. A couple dips down, which tended to correlate more with long holiday weekends and having some community health workers off, but really increases after that and over time, a really good steady outreach effort. Next. When we look at that outreach across the county, we see good reach in all of our Healthy Places Index lowest quartile census tracts and zip codes in the county. And the darker the blue here on the screen is where, again, like last time, we had the higher levels of reach with the number of interactions. And I will say that we've also had a bit more spread in May and June. We had all 10 organizations fully operational, and that meant a little bit more reach happening in Seaside and in the Pajaro, Castroville region. Next. And that's reflected as well as the number of CBOs operating by zip code with, again, the darker blue where we have the most CBOs, generally up to about 7 of the 10 would be operating in one particular zip code by that darker blue. But still good reach by CBOs. And some CBOs are really specific to a particular zip code. So for example, the city of Gonzales operating primarily the main operator in the city of Gonzales, but with their several CBOs having good reach within that zip code. Next.
We're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Is this any better?
Yeah, that's better.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me know that. So we look at the outreach and the efforts by the social determinants of health. And here in this graphic, we have those 6 quadrants shown. We have a number of messages going out in social media over the 2 months of May and June, and many messages that are bilingual. We have also, just to point out, that rapid test ability now by the CBOs with getting that launched really fully more in June. And helping out at vaccination clinics, providing a lot of vaccine information resources, and actually with the CBO hosted clinics, 1,500 people vaccinated. And I'd like to say that, again, they helped with other vaccine clinics as well that were hosted by other organizations. So helping at over 50 or hosting up to 50. That
Krista, you're still going in and out.
50 number.
Krista?
Yeah, sorry, is that any better?
Only when she yells into the mic.
Yeah, when you yell into the mic, it seems to work.
Okay, I will come closer to the mic, but I'm almost done. And again, a big area of support, and that helped with as far as isolation and quarantine as well, is getting food out to people. That really seemed to be the main concern for people to be able to isolate and quarantine, and that's where they were helping get boxes delivered, but also helping with food security in general, working with food distribution sites. Thank you. Next. And again, that outreach and around vaccinations, just to show that as the vaccination rate increased in the county, they were helping at a wide variety of those clinics and providing support sessions as well, and getting people vaccinated, either getting them registered, but then also helping with their own hosted vaccine clinics. Next. And for that isolation and quarantine, again, I mentioned mostly food, but as well helping with a bit of income replacement, utility, rent, mortgage assistance for those individuals that were isolating and quarantine in the months of May and June. Next. Now I'll pass it back over to Rosemary, who you'll be able to hear, to talk about the right sizing.
Thank you, Krista. And I hope that I am sounding clear as well. But before I go into detail with the right sizing, I also want to make sure that Mr. Dan Baldwin is listed as a panelist. He will be speaking to your board in a few minutes once I complete this process. So Dan Baldwin is on as an attendee and should be on as a panelist so that he may speak. The right sizing process, when we came to before you last month in June, we understood that there were two key things that we needed to come back to you with information on, and that was with an expenditure report in terms of where we are to date, and also a process and plan for how we would right size this project. And of course, sustainability of the project is something that we have had on our minds for a while now, and seeing that the needs of our community are really coming through in different ways. It made addressing underlying causes that exacerbated the disparate impact of the pandemic on our communities. And so one of the things that, as we thought about when we looked at how do we right size this project, how do we determine what is the best way to reshape and just, refine the work that we're doing as a whole across the collaboration of the 10 organizations that are implementing. We came up with a solution that would be that we take a two-step process or take this right sizing process into two phases. In the first phase, which would be effective September 1st, and I will have to also preface this with saying that much of this right sizing process is already underway. And that is with the reduction of CHWs that several organizations have organically gone through that process on their own for various reasons. Some CHWs simply were released or moved on to other endeavors or other more permanent positions. So a right sizing process has already begun, even though we are stating that its official effective date would have been September 1st. What we are looking at is these different categories here. And when we take, these are factors that helped with the decision-making process for what would be the most appropriate percentage of reduction in the number of CHWs that we have on our teams. And we looked at what were the current vaccination rates across the county, how was progress done across the board. And we know that there were various organizations and clinics and entities focused on increasing the vaccination rates across the county. It wasn't only the Vida Project who was focused on this, but there was a lot of teamwork that went into that. The Vida Project did have the opportunity to collaborate with many of the vaccine clinics that were held throughout the county, including the fact that many of our partners themselves coordinated, organized, and hosted vaccine clinics throughout the county, throughout South County, on the Peninsula and Seaside, and including North County. We looked at cultural and language reach. These the big and probably one of the most important components of the project was that we have community health workers that were from the communities that were in so dire need of support and outreach, and an increase in access to either vaccines, testings, and also any of the other resources so that they would have the opportunity or the ability to isolate or quarantine appropriately. And so we looked at what organizations had that reach, and we already knew that those that were a part of the project were actually a part of the project because of that fact, because they did have that cultural and language reach. but we also looked at the outcomes, right? What were the wraparound reach, the outreach and wraparound strategies? How did they fare? We also looked at the geographical reach, how many organizations and how many of the CHWs were demonstrating a positive impact, not just through cultural and language, but also the fact that they were in these specific sites and communities. So we arrived at a 35% reduction. Today we have about 101.25 FTEs. So we would be reducing that to 64.5 FTEs. There is a combination of several of these FTE positions are split between 2 people or so. So we have also encouraged our partners as they move forward to look to hold more of FTE positions versus part-time positions, just so that there is a lot more focus and ensuring quality control across the board. And sometimes that is done best with less individuals versus a long list of community health workers to manage and supervise. Of course, when we look at the second phase of this right-sizing process, we are considering beyond the September 30th extension that your board granted us for operations and going beyond October. How do we look at the needs of our community in terms of the lingering effects of COVID-19? We are already beginning to hear of individuals who are suffering from some of those lingering effects and needing to have access to medical care. And so if we can expect those needs to rise as a result of those who did test positive for COVID and survive, we want to make sure that we have a team that is ready to provide access and supports to those resources and the medical attention that they need. We also understand that what is nearly impossible to predict are any new variants, any surges as a result of those new variants. We're currently dealing, as you all are aware, with the Delta variant, but we know that it is impacting those who are unvaccinated the most. So again, our outreach needs to continue to be focused on that population. But we know it's very difficult to predict and tell what would happen throughout the winter months. We also understand that there is a possibility, we don't know enough about this, but if there are any vaccine boosters that are needed, it would be imperative for us to have a team that is ready to become educated and trained so that they in turn can educate and inform our community members and provide, again, the same sort of support and access to receive these boosters. Again, vaccines for children under 12, we don't know when this will become available, if at all, and but we know that it may be on the horizon. And again, it would behoove us to be prepared for any of the outreach and education that is necessary, as well as the support for access. And reinstatement of state mandates, we've heard recommendations to reinstate the indoor mask wearing that just was announced this summer. And as we move forward throughout the year, we don't know what else may be coming back as a mandate, but of course, again, these are all factors that are difficult to predict, but very possible to occur. And so those are factors that we would be looking at. And as we received your approval last month, was that we would come back at the end of the September 30th project extension, and we would want to look at where do we stand at that point when it comes to the needs of the community, and how do we move forward with the second phase of this right sizing process. It may be that it's necessary for us to remain at the first phase number of CHWs, or it may mean that we would need to decrease some more. We would need to take a closer look at that when we get there at that point. We have taken this as an opportunity. This right sizing process has been a great opportunity for us to look beyond the numbers and not just look at the number of CHWs that we have, but also take a closer look at the performance measures. How are we doing when we're out in the field? Taking a look at developing some strategies to have a uniform across the board in terms of performance and outcomes. We took the time to develop and collaborate with a facilitator who was brought on as a consultant, Mr. Ken Smith, and we want to express our appreciation for the Community Foundation for leveraging support for that to be possible. A 2-day training was held just last week with all of the CHWs who are currently a part of this team. We felt it was important that even though we are gearing up for this right sizing process to take effect in the first phase, it was still imperative that everyone receive this training to make sure that we're all on the same page, and the skill set that would be further enhanced for those who do move on beyond the September 1st date would be a value added for our community in general. This training on a 2-day effort was to gear up and prepare for a summer campaign, which would be launching. And the goal is to reach 100,000 individuals and to increase the vaccination rates across the board. The training included some basic information and also enhancing and providing additional information about myths and fears and how to address that. Excuse me, how to best counter and engage those who have any of the concerns or fears or misinformation. And the training concluded with an outreach effort, which was a canvassing door to doors. And in the combined results for the 2 days was 1,131 doors were knocked on throughout East Salinas. We held the training in East Salinas. We wanted to make sure that we were covering that area. We had a total of 623 conversations with those who opened the door and received our CHWs. 401 postcards were disseminated, and 28 vaccination appointments were made for those who accepted our offer for this resource. Prior to this date, we also held a vaccine clinic at the sports complex, which also included an outreach campaign in the days leading up to it, where more than 100 individuals were vaccinated there at the sports complex, and that was in partnership with Natividad Medical Center. So we also appreciate their partnership. And so with that, we will be launched, that campaign will be launched, and we will invite each of you supervisors to participate and support us with the different sites that we will be conducting these very specific outreach efforts throughout the summer. I will now share some details about the expenditures that were reported through June 2021. I will have to let you know that there is one organization who recently had a transition with their accounting firm, which is outsourced. They're a small organization that do not have an accounting team in-house. So these numbers are not 100% accurate. We know that there would be an increase in expenditures with that organization's particular expenditure reports. What we can report to date is that in all of these areas, as you see here, the column the column that is titled total reallocated budget, which was approved in April. In April, we came back to you with a request for a budget modification. It's really what it was and we obtained your approval to move some of the funding from one line item to another or one budget category to another. The total amount awarded is the 4.62 million here, $624. What we know what has been spent is 2.422. This is in the column furthest to the right in the green. That is a total amount that has been spent. We know we have the unallocated funds of 927,000 remaining, and we also have the total allocated funds that have been distributed to the community-based organizations, to our VIDA partners, that remain is $1.399 $774. And so what we know is that this amount will carry the organizations through to the end of September 30th. Now, when it comes to a budget modification request, as you are aware that the The budget allocation to begin with was done by estimates of what we anticipated would be spent. Again, when we came to you in April, seeking a budget modification or budget reallocation is what we called it at that time, but in essence, it is a budget modification request. Since then, we have identified a need for another modification, and that is to move $20,000 from quarantine support to a personnel. This is so that one of our partners will be able to continue to operate and provide services in South County. Another need was to move $1,569 from indirect admin costs to operating expenses. That is a category in which we are aware that there is a deficit for a particular partner. So we would want to be able to grant that so that those needs can be met. We also have a request for $1,802 to be moved from telephone expenses to printing. There is a deficit in printing costs, and then also $802 to the purchase of PPE, hand sanitizers, and face masks, etc. So that is a request to modify the current budget as it is approved in the first column, which was approved on April 7th, and then you'll see that the total amounts remain the same. It is just moving funds from one line item to another. I did want to share a little bit about the project sustainability I mentioned earlier, is that as we continue to work on this project and administering, managing the outcomes of this project, we would want to be able to come to you at the end of the September 30th extension that you granted to us last month. And with that, at that point, as I mentioned, in the second phase of the right sizing process, we will know more about where we need to be, where we are, and where we need to be moving forward. We feel that there is a likelihood that the remaining unallocated funds would be able to carry us through for the winter and perhaps even beyond 2021. So we would have more specific information with that request at that point when we would come back in October. We have worked diligently to leverage funds with other sources, federal grants. We have one application that we have not heard from yet, but it did go out to the Health Resources Administration. And it is a request of $1 million that would be able to support at least 7 community health workers with 3 different partners. So that is something that we're waiting for. Should we be awarded, we'll know that will continue to support the project for at least 2 years. Then we also just recently received word the health department was granted the $3.9 million from the Health and Human Services Office as a federal grant that would also provide support for community health workers throughout this project. We have a partnership that we're working with the Workforce Development Board. This is an opportunity for our community health workers, a cohort of 30 CHWs, to be certified. And this would certainly just enhance the work that we're doing in terms of training and performance, and that's something that we want to look forward to. We know that Assembly Bill 133 was just signed today, and we're still exploring what does that mean for us in terms of the possibility to have access to these resources as a Medi-Cal reimbursed project. If we were able to move in that direction, we still need to explore that, but that is a potential source of funding to be able to sustain the project beyond this year as well. With that, I do also want to introduce our partner, our colleague and partner in this work, who has done an extensive amount of work to also leverage and resources so that we can be as successful as we have been. So Mr. Dan Baldwin, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you, Rosemary. And it's great to be speaking with all of you, Board of Supervisors. I hope you all have the same sense that we do, that this is really one of the strongest partnerships that could be imagined. When you all voted these funds in December, there was no program and there was an idea. And all of the infrastructure, all the moving parts have all been developed in real time, and there's been and it's worked out really, really well. There's been really great, solid project management, the partnership between with Rosemary and Krista and others, with the Community Foundation, with Michael Castro, and then with our two project managers, have really provided very strong program and fiscal oversight. This is I'm really impressed by the discipline that has been not necessarily imposed, but that has been demonstrated through this entire project. And I do want to reinforce that the project management that's being done outside of the county, done by our project managers, is actually paid for through a third-party grant. And so when you do things like this, others take notice and they want to be supportive. And this is also now reflected in these federal grants that have been secured. So it, like any program like this, there's an element of it that is just going to be fluid, and you just can't help it, because again, we're not going off a template that we've used 3 or 4 times. We're in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic as well. And I think the fact that there are so few budgetary changes and requests, I think really reflect well on the forethought that was put into this and the management that's been put into this. I'm not going to make the actual request, but I am going to suggest that here we are, requiring a Board of Supervisors vote for essentially $24,000 of a $4.9 million project. That maybe some of that authority could be delegated to Charles, and he and I could work on that so that we wouldn't have to be using up your time coming back, and county time coming back with the requests that are not in the larger picture overly material, and then just work more efficiently that way. I just want to, close by saying this has been tremendous. I've certainly developed stronger relationships with a lot of people in the county. It goes all the way down through all the staff. This is only going to benefit all of us in the future as we work on any number of projects. But I'm very, very proud of Vida. And I know she's being reassigned, but Rosemary is going to be a first ballot inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She is a rock star, and it's been a real pleasure to have her as part of this process. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Rosemary, or to you, Chair Askew.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for your kind words. So supervisors, this concludes our presentation. This is just a simple summary of the action that we are requesting that you take today. And you've received this update in terms of the expenditure report, which was our charge when we came back to you last month. We also seek that you approve the budget modification request that we received from the Community Foundation. And we also ask that you approve and authorize the county administrative officer or designee, maybe assistant county administrative officer, to approve future budget modification requests, so long as they are requests for modification within the budget categories that were previously approved by the Board of Supervisors. And lastly, please provide direction as you feel fit. And with that, I conclude this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. And thank you, Dan, for joining us again this afternoon from a different location across town. I'll make a few brief comments to start, but the VITA program, I really feel like has been an incredibly successful demonstration of the county's leadership and our community response to the pandemic. The way that we've been able to partner between government and nonprofit organizations, and nonprofits partnering with other nonprofits to get resources and information to people when and where they need it has really been quite incredible. I just wanted to, again, I'm glad Mr. Baldwin was on the call here today, but I'd also just like to give a quick recognition to COPA for their early advocacy and recognition of the needs in the community on this for this kind of outreach. I definitely would support. I think that we continue to have significant disparities and the impact COVID is having on our community and how we're able to get vaccine and testing out into the community. So from where I sit, I see that the need remains and will continue to sort of change over time. And we're again seeing our alternate care site welcoming guests who need a safe place to quarantine. As vaccines become available for children, we're going to see a new push to get outreach to families who need more information to make the right choices for their family. So I'm definitely saying that we can't let our guard down just yet. And I'm happy to support the request to approve the amendments, but also to give some authority to the CAO or his designee to determine how to best fully expend the full $4.989 million that was originally allocated. So we'll pass the microphone around to my colleagues for some additional comments and open it up to the public. But I see Supervisor Alejo has your hand raised. We'll pass the microphone to you.
Madam Chair, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve staff's recommendation with only the caveat that at least we get a report back, at least on consent agenda, so that we know that any changes the CAO made that we and the public are apprised of those minor changes that are made within the budget. But I did, first of all, I want to really thank and extend my respect and gratitude to Dan Baldwin and the Community Foundation, along with all the United Way and all the other nonprofit volunteers that have really taken this project on it's really been a game changer for Monterey County. When I brought this forward in December, my colleagues and we all took a risk in approving it, knowing that it was going to take some time over the winter break to get the program established and then hire and train staff. And I think we made the right moves at the right time. Dr. Moreno shared some data that showed that Monterey County has now reached 73% overall vaccinated vaccination. But Salinas, which was one of the hardest hit communities nationally early on in the pandemic, is now it's at 79, almost hitting 80 of at least one vaccination among its residents. So there's a lot of people to thank, including the large mass farm worker vaccination clinics. But I think VITA is certainly part of that story of what really turned things around for Monterey County, but especially the hardest hit areas like Salinas. So I wanted to just express my appreciation and thank you for the report. Thank you for Rosemary and the team members for implementing the changes the board asked in terms of right sizing the project and really trying to keep that right sizing going for the next few months, but also perhaps extending it, working within the existing budget. And so thank you, Dan. But beyond this pandemic, the Community Foundation and Dan have been I've been honored to work with them on the homelessness issues. And I know that during other natural disasters like the wildfires, they've really come through. So as we reflect on the progress we made, it's also a moment to thank our partners that have really are part of the success story of Monterey County being resilient and coming through to achieving its goals to save lives and protect our residents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And just to be clear, could you restate your motion?
Yeah, it was just the motion was to approve staff's recommendation with the caveat to report back by the CAO of any changes that are made.
Okay,
Yeah.
so approving the recommendation that's here with the remaining, retaining the full 4.989 and allowing the CAO or his designee to make any additional amendments to the line items, bringing back a notification?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I'd second that, and I'd echo the comments, and I do it's been we all had concerns. It's been a successful partnership, as was pointed out by Supervisor Alejo. But I do think when you're doing these things, you have to make some adjustments as you go along. And I don't see the necessity of having, especially when we're going on a break, to have to bring every one of those minor adjustments back. And I too like to thank Dan Baldwin. because I'm not sure we would have bought into this if we didn't have the community foundation behind it and their credibility. And I do like what Dan said earlier, because I sat on the community foundation with Dan for 6 years, but I did like the fact that community foundation, rather than just getting money, got in and got their hands into the grind work and actually helped put this together along with Kim Stemler and our staff. So it's been a good partnership, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I think I saw Supervisor Lopez's hand up next. So that was a second, Supervisor Phillips, on the motion?
It was.
Okay, so we have a motion by Alejo, a second from Phillips. We'll go to Supervisor Lopez and then back to Supervisor Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, my only issue with the motion, I guess, is the questions around the limits on approve and authorize. What do we consider minor? I mean, it's just very vague language, and I'm concerned that that could be interpreted as policy. So if we put a number to that, I'd be much more comfortable. We talked about less than $25,000 in terms of those shifts. I mean, just having complete control, I mean, it concerns me given the history and major movement.
Mr. Chair, yeah, can we put a limit if it's under $50,000? Would you be comfortable with that?
Is that an amendment to your motion, Supervisor Alejo? Are you comfortable with that, Supervisor Phillips?
I'm trying to address Chris's concern. I'm putting that out. We might be able to amend the motion to include that.
Is that
So what's your amendment to put a cap of 50 on it?
Right, for any changes.
Right.
All right, well,
just to
Charles McKee can get a lot of bike riding in on,
Exactly.
on 50,000. So
That's a good bike. I agree. Just to be clear, I think what's being proposed here is not taking money from elsewhere in the county budget. It's moving monies within this budget authorization, potentially between different nonprofits, as it's being used for this program. And so it's not that we're going to be taking money elsewhere. It's just to address some of the operational needs that might happen within this project, the VITA project.
And just to add on to that, so the total.
Appreciate that, but is there a number, Charles, that you're comfortable with?
I would actually maybe turn it back to Rosemary and Dan if they have, I'm not sure what they've encountered already that might be might guide as far as a good number.
Dan, Rosemary, do you want to chime in once again? And I guess the question that I would have is the allocation, the budget modification request for July 27th shows the spend down to 4.062 million. But in order to fully expend the remaining $927,000, there would need to be some authorization for the CAO or his designee to determine where those dollars need to be allocated into the line items that are currently in place. Can you speak to that, Rosemary?
Yes, Madam Chair, it's my understanding that the unallocated amount that is under the 900 and I forget the exact amount, but that the 927,000 that has not been allocated and approved by the Board of Supervisors. So I would understand that that is funding we need to come back to the board with a request for allocation of anything that comes from that specific amount there. In terms of the request for authority here is moving, Mr. McKee's correct in that it is simply moving funds from these existing, already approved funds and categories and budget line items. In this request here, it is, less than 30,000, it's 25,000 or so. The previous one was in the similar range as well. I would estimate that a limit of about 50,000 would be something we can work with, given the fact that we only have a couple of months. Of course, it's something that's difficult to predict what a need might arise, but I think 50,000 is reasonable. And I'll allow for Dan to comment on that since we don't have a chance to connect, but I think that might work.
I think that's a really, that's a very workable number. Yeah, it's very practical.
All right, so we'll circle back to Supervisor Lopez in regards to the question of is $50,000 between the line items something you're comfortable with? And then would Alejo want to amend the motion? And would our seconder want to amend the second?
So yes, I'm comfortable with the 50 with the clear understanding that that 927 is coming back to us for allocation.
And the motion maker Alejo, is that what you're comfortable with as well? It's different than the motion that I originally understood it to be.
I'm good with that language.
I concur.
Okay, so we have a change to the motion that is to approve the budget modification request listed as July 27th with a total budget of $4,062,624, granting authorization to the CAO to make approved changes up to $50,000 between the existing line items on the presented budget. Okay. Supervisor Adams. So we have a motion and a second. We'll finish our conversation, go out to public comment, and then bring it back.
Thank you. I honestly still just want to applaud the program. Everybody wasn't supportive of this when we started out. And I think that Supervisor Phillips is right. When the Community Foundation got on board, it really did bring up the comfort level for a whole lot of people who were engaged in it already. But to me, this was just the absolute appropriate way to approach a community problem that we had when we had COVID. And that is, we just got right down into the zip codes and working with organizations like them. We had us and the other people from Oaxaca and so many of the other groups like COPA particularly allowed us to do that. But this wasn't our comfort zone, but it was the people who needed the work's comfort zone so much. And I applaud all of my colleagues for the trust that they had in these community organizations to be able to deliver as they did. And they delivered 100%. I agree with what Supervisor Alejo said in that our county really was looking grim as far as the numbers that we had of people with COVID. And by working with programs like this one specifically, we were able to stem the tide. And I'm just so very proud of the county. I really am. I'm just so very proud that we made a big investment. A lot of people choked at $5 million, but it was a big investment and it honestly was so worth it. So I'm really very proud of this moment today. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Supervisor Alejo has your hand raised again.
Madam Chair, just in my recognition, I didn't want to end my comments without thanking COPA, which originally came forward on this, as you stated also, but I just wanted to also join in and thanking them for their vision and then bringing other people together to implement the program. So props to them.
All right, I'm going to offer a substitute motion. I really feel like the $4.9 million that was originally allocated for this was an appropriate amount of money for the kind of outreach that we needed. And I'm concerned that the current motion on the table eliminates that $927,000 from access and utilization as we continue to reinstate mask orders. And as I said, as we continue to have people re-entering our quarantine housing, as we hope to be able to extend vaccinations out into younger demographics. I feel strongly that we continue the work that we've started and built up in partnership with our community. We've been able to leverage additional dollars. So I would like to make a substitute motion that we retain the full approved budget of $4.989 million for the program, allowing the CAO to make adjustments and report back on those adjustments of that additional $900,000 into the existing line items as we move forward. So as a substitute motion, I'm going to put on the table.
So I have a question to your motion. And that is, as I look at the numbers that have been brought forward today and the fact that we're downsizing this project, moving down to eliminating 44 of the community health worker positions, I'm fearful that if we say, okay, it was $499 for that program, we're going to put it there, when in fact that program is being ramped down. Perhaps we are correct to hold on to that 927 because the next program may be different than this one. You know, I I don't want to get rid of the money for the idea, but I do want to have I think we should allow for flexibility to be able to direct the funding in a different kind of approach. It may not be from the community health workers. It may be totally focused in kindergartens or, some other way. So I'm not sure that I would be able to support ensuring that the funding that we originally sent to this particular project needs to stay with this particular project when it may well be spent in another way. And I think that's sort of what we were trying to do with giving the CAO sort of an oversight to this, that it may not all need to be spent on this particular focus. So with that, I won't be able to second your motion.
Supervisor Lopez.
Yeah, I just want to agree with Supervisor Adams. I think that there's a lot of shifts coming and we need to be part of that conversation. And so that 900,000 remains in this dedicated pool, but it's got to come back to us to have that conversation about where it goes. And nearly $1 million is not something to sneeze at. So I can't second the alternate motion.
All right, let's take it out to public comment. I don't see any other board hands raised. We'll take that to public comment. We have a motion with a second on the floor. Any public comment on this item? Maria Elena Manzo, we'll give you permission to unmute and we'll stick with our minute 30 seconds for public comment this afternoon.
Hi, Supervisor. My name is Maria Elena Manzo. I'm the program manager for Mujeres en Acción and co-chair of COPA's Breaking the Chain of Infection team. When we proposed the community health worker idea that became the VIDA program to the Board of Supervisors last November, we knew that we will have to be flexible in our response to the COVID pandemic, that the work will change as conditions change, but that we will stay focused on reducing infections in those areas hardest hit by COVID. We started out with an emphasis on testing and supported isolation. As vaccines became available, we shifted our focus to getting people vaccinated. This time, we have developed the capacity to respond to whatever turn the virus takes in the coming months. At the present time, the number of infections is relatively low. We hope that it will continue to wind down. But if cases rise, we have a group of trained community health workers who know their communities and are trusted by their communities to respond and adapt as needs change. So thank you for your leadership and support of the VIDA project.
Next up, we have Carla Lobo.
Good afternoon, Chair, Ruta Skew, and Supervisors. My name is Carla Lobo, and I am the VIDA Data Analyst for BHC. BHC has been working hard to ensure that the CHWs are achieving the intended purpose of VIDA and expanding our strategies to meet families where they are. BHC recently implemented a targeted strategy that came from the community to be present at the African American or Black churches in Seaside to further support the African American and Black community, and has had tremendous impact. The continuation of this work will allow us to deepen the level of work and continue our impact across the county. The right sizing of this project was done in an equitable way that not only considered the organization's capacity and desire to continue supporting the community, but also took into account the level of impact. I know it was a difficult task for the county and the Community Foundation, but we are looking forward to strengthening the infrastructure to respond to what is to come in the next few months. We thank you for your continuous commitment in supporting families during this difficult time. And we look forward to continuing to improve our systems to address the persistent racial inequities that still profoundly are seen throughout our county. Thank you, and I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment before bringing back to the board? Seeing none, we have what? Sorry, Martinez.
Hello, good afternoon, board. My name is Saraid Martinez. I'm the executive director with the Binational Center for the Development of Indigenous Oaxacan Communities, and definitely want to thank your leadership, the leadership of the Community Foundation, your health department, has helped us tremendously to launch and get this project going, this initiative going, and is really supporting our Indigenous farm worker communities in the Salinas Valley. As we know, it continues to be disproportionate impact our communities, and thanks to this initiative, we have been able to hire Indigenous community health workers that know the community, they speak their language, and with the special concentration, where we know our community lives. Right now, just a couple, weeks ago, we hosted a second clinic in Greenfield at our office. For the first dose, we had over 130 people, many of them Indigenous farm workers, and we were able to provide the language access support to ensure that the community was able to get the information in the language. And we're also continue to improve and test our community. As we know, we have testing in South County, but it's very limited, and our community usually hesitant to go to a clinic to find that out, but we're able to provide those services. So we thank you and hope that we can continue to get your support to continue with this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item, the Community Health Worker VITA program? Seeing no additional hands raised, I'll close public comment and we'll bring it back to the board. We do have a motion and a second. I unfortunately am not able to support a motion that eliminates $927,000 from the VITA program funding pot. So I will not be able to support the motion that's on the table. I unfortunately didn't get a second on my motion to maintain the full budget of $4.9 million. So we'll just so everyone knows I'm fully supportive of the project and would like to see it continue to be fully funded. But we'll take a roll call vote with the motion on the table. Thank you.
Supervisor Alejo. Aye. Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
Supervisor Lopez.
Aye.
Supervisor Adams.
So I'm so sorry, but I need to hear the motion restated then, because I did not believe that we were taking money out of the program. So could I please hear the motion restated?
Supervisor Alejo, could you restate the motion, please?
Well, I made the motion and then Chris added some language that I agreed to accept as an amendment. So maybe he could restate what that additional language was beyond the staff recommendation and the report back by our CEO of any changes under $50,000.
So that was the only amendment I put forward. It is accepting staff's recommendation with a clear amendment that any expenditure over $50,000 would have to be routed back to the board. It's that simple. I don't think we're removing 900,000. We're just keeping the control of that 900,000 with this board of supervisors rather than assigning that authority to our CAO. And again, nearly $1 million. I think we should have oversight. That was the motion.
Okay,
Rosemary, sorry.
that's clear. Thank you.
And Rosemary, could you restate the staff recommendation?
Yes, sir. The staff recommendation was to it was to approve and authorize the county administrative officer or assistant county administrative officer to approve budget modification requests from the foundation. It did not specify which funding amount. It's actually, yes, it does. I summarized this from the board report. It is with the existing approved budget and allocations that were made and approved by the board in April and today, if we were to approve the budget modification request.
So it's for the full 4.9 then?
Well, it's for the, I should clarify, it's for the allocated amounts. The 927,000 has not been allocated yet. So that funding would remain. What is my understanding, we've discussed this, I believe in the last request as well, is that it would, that $927,026 remains. However, once we are ready to allocate that to the partners within these approved budget categories or budget line items, or perhaps any new budget categories that we have not yet presented to the board, we would need to come back with that request to be able to access the $927,000.
Thank you so much for all of that explanation. I think it's still my turn to vote, so I'll vote aye.
And Chair Supervisor Root Askew.
And just to be really clear, what we're requiring is that this would have, so we gave a little bit of authority to the CAO to move authorized allocated budget money around without coming back to the board. But we would be asking that $927,000, does that remain with the VITA project?
I think it's in the VITA project, but it's not, it hasn't been allocated by the board as far as where in the VITA project it would go. And if I'm misstating that, Rosemary, please let me know. But I understand it's the 927,000 it is in the budget for the VITA project, but just not specifically allocated out to the different line items.
Correct. That is correct there.
Okay, and then you would be returning to the board with a recommendation about where to allocate that $927,000 within the VITA project line items as listed.
Yes, Madam Chair, that is correct.
Okay, so long as we're maintaining the full $4.9 million in the VITA project, I'm comfortable supporting the motion. So I'll vote aye. Thank you. And thank you for clarifying all of those details. I think that was an important clarifying point. All right, the motion carries. We are moving on to our final item of the day. Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, Krista. Thank you, Dan, for joining us as well. Our final item of the day is item number 19, a public hearing to consider actions to conditionally approve the Rancho Cañada Village project, including a general plan amendment, a zoning amendment, the Rancho Cañada Village project. And I will welcome Eric Lundquist, Mary Israel, Randy Ishii, Tom Bonagut, Darby Marshall, Megan Jones, Mitch Vernon, Alyssa Tunnell, and I think I didn't miss anyone, but thank you all for being here, and we'll pass the microphone over to you, Eric. Thank you. Yes.
Can you hear me now? Whoa, okay. I am not Eric Lundquist. Good afternoon, Chair Askew and members of the board. My name is Mary Israel, and I'm presenting the Rancho Cañada Village project. Before the supervisors is a 145 unit residential subdivision with 40 units of affordable housing, a refinement of the increased unit of greater affordability alternative in the second final environmental impact report, or SFEIR. That's what I'm going to say. The purpose of this hearing is to review the project and then take action on certification of the SFEIR and associated actions, a general plan amendment of the Rancho Cañada Village Special Treatment Area, which I'll call the RCV STA, a rezoning ordinance, and combined development permit for the vesting tentative map and entitlements. The project is proposed on the western 77-acre portion of former Rancho Cañada Golf Course between Carmel Valley Road and the Carmel River, east of Valverde Drive and west of Palo Corona Regional Park. Staff circulated the SFEIR on April 16th, 2021, and staff recommends that you certify it, adopt CEQA findings, and a statement of overriding considerations. The SFEIR identified potentially significant impacts which could result from components of the project and require mitigation for all the topics listed on this screen. Two areas of impacts identified in the SFEIR were found to potentially be significant and unavoidable. Two mitigation measures, TRA 1 and 2, are applied that do not reduce traffic impacts to less than significant. And also there are land use planning impacts that relate to policies for affordable housing and for traffic related to placement of affordable housing in the county. In its recommendation to the board, The Planning Commission recommended an amendment to General Plan Policy CV 1.27, which would remove these land use and planning policy impacts. The actual traffic impacts would remain. Oh, did I go too far? So the board would need to adopt a statement of overriding consideration with respect to the significant unavoidable impacts. You do so by weighing the economic, legal, social, and other benefits of the project, including region-wide and statewide environmental benefits, against its unavoidable significant environmental impacts to traffic and land use planning in determining whether to approve the project. Each benefit constitutes an overriding consideration warranting approval of this project, independent of other benefits, despite each and every unavoidable impact. Finding 6 of the CEQA resolution lists many overriding considerations, some of which are highlighted on this slide. Jobs housing balance is a key one. There's a range of housing types in the project. There's preservation of conservation open space, and there are economic benefits to the county and the economy, particularly through construction jobs. The project includes a general plan amendment to reduce affordable housing minimum requirement for RCV STA, that is policy CV 1.27, takes it from 50%, a percentage that was added when the Carmel Valley housing cap was higher and the project area was larger, to 20%. The amendment would remove workforce and add notwithstanding any other general plan policies. This slide shows the specific land use planning affordable housing policies for the county and how a general plan amendment helps to bridge inconsistencies. The project already is well within the Carmel Valley housing cap for new units, which is limited by CV 1.6. And amending CV 1.27, the affordable percentage of 20% applied to the project and other general plan policies notwithstanding, corrects inconsistencies with LU 2.13 and LU 1.19. Another component of the project is a rezoning ordinance that is before you. That's part of the decision to rezone the RCV SDA, which was all public, quasi-public, to an appropriate zoning district and density for each use. This ordinance also adds a special development standard for HDR and MDR zoning regulations for the RCV SDA in Title 21. And now we come to the project itself, a combined development permit, including a vesting tentative subdivision map that I'll show on the next slide. It also includes a blanket administrative permit for site plan approvals for development on 105 market rate lots, 40 units of affordable workforce housing on the 5-acre lot, and administrative permit for development within the S district for the rest of the development of the project. I'm gonna try it. Sorry. Before you is the vesting tentative map, or the VTM. It adjusts the boundaries with 2 regional parks parcels. It adds private roadways, parks, habitat preserves, 2 parcels for wells, and creates 106 residential lots. 1 lot is of 5 acres and is proposed to be where all the affordable housing would be developed through a future application for entitlement. In a recent resubmittal, the applicant included the proposed roadways within the affordable housing parcel in this VTM. You can see it on this slide as parcel A. This slide presents the project's housing specifics as recommended by the Planning Commission. I think I mentioned there are 93 residential lots for development, 12 constructed townhouses close to the entrance of the development, and the applicant proposes to build 28 inclusionary housing units and 12 workforce units on that 5-acre parcel that I pointed out. The project complies with the inclusionary housing ordinance requirement to provide a minimum of 20% affordable housing units. The project site consists of 5 existing lots, and the inclusionary housing calculation excludes existing lots. Consequently, The required inclusionary housing contribution is calculated based on the net difference of 140 total units. Using 20% affordability ratio, the project is required to provide 28 inclusionary units, which the project does. The normally required affordable housing distribution of the 28 units would consist of 8% moderate, 6% low, and 6% very low. The board may modify requirements of Chapter 1840, which is the inclusionary housing, if the board finds, based on substantial evidence, that the applicant has demonstrated that there is no reasonable relationship between the development and the requirements imposed by that chapter, that the requirements would take property in violation of federal or California Constitution, or that as a result of unusual and unforeseen circumstances, it would not be appropriate to apply or would be appropriate to modify the requirements of the chapter. RCV offered county financial feasibility analysis prepared for this project that explains how the development of the normal distribution of inclusionary housing would be cost prohibitive. They also present an argument for the need for more moderate income housing in Carmel Valley. And at the request of the Housing Advisory Committee, which I'll call the HAC in a couple slides, staff prepared a table on the distribution of affordable housing in Carmel Valley that is shown in the discussion attachment. I mentioned here that the HAC responded positively to an increase in units, and also townhouses are affordable by design, and other reasons are listed on the slide. The combined development permit also includes use permits for removal of 37 native trees and development in the floodplain. This is a list of the proposed tree removal and proposed replacement. This is a draft drainage plan from the vesting tentative map, which shows proposed deepening and widening of natural depressions into drainage basins and the use of that soil to build up the ground where many of the lots are proposed. I can point out more details on this if you wish, but I'll just move ahead to say that there's also on sheet 7 of the VTM, proposed levee improvements and a pump station, flood wall, and new culvert are proposed to improve flood control on and off the project site. About 6 letters were comments to the board that were received this week, and all of those commend these flood improvements. In order to approve this project, the board should adopt a mitigating, monitoring, and reporting plan. There are 99 conditions of approval on the project. This slide shows all the responsible departments for conditions, or COA, many of which are mitigation measures, or MMs. RCV requested several conditions of approval be revised as they outlined in the letter of June 8th attached to this staff report. Staff discussed these requests with RCV in several meetings. In many cases, compromises were reached. RCV understood that staff cannot change conditions 4, 38, and they did not contest the stronger language that was added to condition 55 that avoids unexplored statements that are made in the VTM from becoming the rule for the project. RCV's request for affordable housing was adjusted to 28 moderate income level and 12 workforce, and language was added to demonstrate that the applicant's intent is to serve local people with affordable housing, and that's addressed in condition 112. So those are the ways that we met halfway with the applicants. However, a traffic signal or similar intersection traffic control was required in the 2016 project and the EIR due to the inclusion of a signal in the EIR's traffic studies. A roundabout was requested by TAMC very close to the 2016 project hearing, and therefore this condition was applied to the 130 unit project in the 2021 project as well. RCV requests the county include reimbursement for costs above their fair share to be added to that condition, number 52. Staff complied, but somewhat uneasily. It is in the hands of the board to direct staff to keep this somewhat vague language in the condition or leave the sentence out of the condition while encouraging RCV to seek regional parks and other neighbor contributions through direct agreements. A request that county staff was not eager to comply with was to make the full length of an internal road and cul-de-sac public. This is due to several factors. One is that subdivisions are usually responsible for their new roads inside their properties. Another is County Public Works, having just gained many additional roads to maintain with the closure of Fort Ord Reuse Authority, does not have the funding or person power to add more roads and keep them in good condition. Finally, the current design of the on-site road that is proposed for transfer to county is not designed to county specifications. To do so would mean changing the VTM and the lot sizes of about 24 lots. There is no specific regulation in Monterey County Code that prevents such a transfer. However, if the board opts to grant the applicant's request or compromise and take on the roads up to the edge of the affordable housing parcel, for example, roughly 1,500 linear feet, then staff recommends we table the vote for a future meeting so staff can work with the applicant on new wording of the condition number 47, as well as redraft the VTM to reflect standard widths for the roads and other modifications to the residential lot widths near it. The board could also agree with staff that none of the internal roads in this development should be public, leaving the language in condition number 47 as it is. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission, staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors certify the Rancho Cañada Village Environmental Impact Report, adopt CEQA findings and a statement of overriding considerations, and conditionally do the following: amend policy CV 1.27 of the 2010 General Plan Carmel Valley Master Plan for the new percentages of 20% affordable and other minor changes, approve a zoning ordinance for the area of the project, approve a combined development permit for vesting tenant map and entitlements, and adopt a mitigation monitoring and reporting plan. Wendy Strimling, Assistant County Counsel, will explain the final bullet on this slide. Oh. Yeah, you gotta go all the way in. Here, take my place.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, Board. Wendy Strimling, Assistant County Counsel. I did want to just address that the proposed conditional approval of these entitlements. This is due to a unique circumstance, which is the outgrowth of litigation over your 2016 approvals of a project on this site. As you'll recall, the board certified an EIR, amended CV 1.27, approved a 130 unit project that included 25 moderate income units, and adopted a corresponding zoning ordinance. Litigation was filed. That litigation is just about at conclusion. In May of 2021, the Court of Appeal issued a decision upholding all of the county board's approvals. That Court of Appeal decision is now final. The remitter has been issued. And so the next step is that the trial court will enter judgment, but that hasn't happened just yet, although we expect it to happen quite soon. Therefore, Rancho Cañada Venture has requested, and staff also recommends, a conditional approval of these entitlements that are before you today. Essentially, it will provide Rancho Cañada Venture an election between the 2016 and 2021 approvals. They sort of have 3 months to make that election because there are 2 conditions subsequent, which are that no litigation, if the board were to approve staff's recommendation today, that the 2 conditions would be that no litigation on these approvals would be filed within 95 days of posting a notice of determination, and that Rancho Cañada Venture would notify the HCD director of their election to proceed under these approvals. So you'll see in each of the draft documents before you, it reflects this unique circumstance. The amendment to CVMP policy 1.27, as I stated, was actually already approved by the board in 2016. So we're doing it again, but it won't be necessary if the trial court enters judgment as is expected, in which case the resolution just requests authority for the HCD director to update some of the APN numbers, which is really a ministerial action, not a amendment of the Carmel Valley Master Plan. Really, it's just a correction. With regard to the zoning will only go into effect if these conditions subsequent occur. And it only becomes operative if the final map for this 145 unit project is approved. And that zoning then would supersede the zoning ordinance from 2016. And lastly, the project resolution is also subject to that sort of 3-month election period. So that, I think I will turn the presentation back over to Mary and give her the microphone. We can close? Okay, so that concludes staff's presentation.
Great, thank you for the comprehensive report and the work that you've done to get us to this point. Let's give our applicants an opportunity to present, and we'll stick with our traditional 10 minutes.
I believe Jim Moose, our attorney, is on the line. If we could hear from him first, and then I'll make.
We do. We will bring Jim in over from the attendee side to a panelist. Jim, bear with us. We're going to bring you over in as a panelist where you can then unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear or see me?
We can hear and see you. Thanks for joining us, Jim.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to the board. I'll try to keep my remarks fairly brief. I want to sort of elaborate on the background leading to where we are right now, as just discussed by Assistant County Counsel Wendy Strimling. This is, I think, a unique situation. As she mentioned, the board approved an earlier iteration of this project back in late 2016. At that time, the proposed project as set forth in the EIR would have included 281 units, but an alternative in the EIR proposed only 130 units. What the board approved was the 130 unit alternative. This decision was challenged in the Superior Court by the Carmel Valley Association, and the Superior Court agreed with CVA that the 130 unit alternative was a true project. And for that reason, the environmental impact report was inadequate. The court also concluded that because the 130 unit alternative was a true project, the alternatives in the IR, which had been keyed to the 281 unit proposal, were insufficient, and they should have been keyed to the 130 unit proposal. The court also found that the board's findings to the effect that there were unusual circumstances justifying a variation from the normal breakdown of very low, low, and moderate units were not supported by substantial evidence. The court also found in an issue unrelated to the EIR that the county had violated its general plan by failing to update the DES ordinance on a timely basis. So all this was taken up on appeal. We, the applicant, appealed the CEQA determinations, but the county appealed the non-CEQA determination, and there was a cross appeal by CVA. And because of the fact that the county did not appeal the CEQA determinations, it was lawful and appropriate for the county to redo the EIR. So we treated that as kind of an insurance policy. We were appealing from the decision of the Superior Court on the alleged inadequacy of the EIR while supporting the county's efforts to fix the EIR. And they pursued the non-CEQA issues. So we got very close to the finish line on this EIR, and we're in front of the Planning Commission with a proposal for 145 units, including 40 units of affordable housing, when we were happily blessed with a victory in the Court of Appeal that completely overturned the Superior Court decision, which meant that the 2016 approvals are now valid. There was an opportunity for this to be taken to the California Supreme Court. That did not happen. So the victory is complete. It's just a matter of paperwork to take it back down to the trial court. So this victory in the Court of Appeal gave my client the ability to simply stand on the 2016 approvals and to abandon this current project. But we have chosen not to do that because we've heard again and again from the advisory bodies to the county, the so-called HAC and the Land Use Advisory Committee and the Planning Commission, that if there were a way to get more affordable units into this project, that would be a good thing. So we have chosen to bring to the board the option for what's called refined alternative 6B, which instead of having 25 moderate units as the 2016 approval had, would have 28, but would also add 12 workforce units. So we believe that this is a better project for the community. We've done what we can to be responsive. We don't want to imperil our 2016 approvals because getting through the Court of Appeal was a very long and arduous and expensive effort. The applicant literally has been at this project since 2004. So the choice we're providing to the board is whether to approve this new version or to leave in place the 2016 approvals. The conditionality of it, as Ms. Strimling explained, was to give us the ability to abandon this new proposal in the event there's litigation over it. If there was someone out there who didn't appreciate the 15 additional units and filed a new CEQA lawsuit, rather than go through years more of CEQA litigation, we would just pull the plug and rest on our 2016 approvals. So I wanted to give you that background. And with that, I'm happy to either answer questions or hand it over to Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Williams, did you want to use up the rest of the time available?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Did you want to continue with the time available?
Yes.
Thank
yes, I
you.
do. I would beg the everyone's well, with the hope that you give me a little more time. It's taken 15 years to get here. I'm giving you a map today, and the plans aren't as important, but I want to reference them because it comes back to a lot of time we've spent with the CBA fixing problems, not causing them. And they're proud of it, and so are we. So we want to share it to you in a form that isn't on a screen that you can look at and hold and be tangible. Mary showed you one of the elevations, but it is part of the solution that we came to with the community. The original lawsuit obviously divided folks in the valley, and the process we went through afterwards wasn't able to get us back together. What I'd ask you to look at is the area map. And I have two questions asked me quite often over the last 15 more years that I've been involved. Why are you doing this? And now after the court, just why don't you just go to 2016? So I'd like to answer that as quickly as I can, but I think it's germane to your decisions today, because this is a community coming together, and I'd love for the Board of Supervisors to be part of that with your full support. If you look at the map, I'll start this journey 50 years ago. On the right-hand side in the middle, there's an 18-hole golf course that was built by Nick Lombardo. 45 years ago, I met this gentleman in the General Plan Committee rewrite of Carmel Valley. He was the chair and a numbers in the community rewrote the Carmel Valley portion of the master plan. Fast forward about 45 years ago, also in the upper right-hand corner, you see Pacific Meadows. That property was given to the county about 45 years ago, 40 to 45 years ago. It was given for low and very low income housing, and that was built by the county. And the communities enjoyed those 200, I guess a little under 200 employee housing units up there for the last 45 years. Now we get 35 years ago, and on the left-hand side, behind the Mission, you see Mission Ranch. 35 years ago, the Board of Supervisors had approved 85 condominium units on Mission Ranch. The city of Carmel didn't think that was appropriate and sued the county. At that time, Clint Eastwood, I wasn't working for him yet, decided he didn't like one governmental agency suing another, spending tax money. He asked me to do an evaluation of the project the first time I ever did anything for him. And I told him how bad the buildings were because he wanted to restore them and keep it the way it was. He bought it anyway and told me to fix it. And ironically, at that particular time was when I reached to my friend Tony Lombardo, Nick's son, and Tony started our journey almost 40 years ago. One thing we learned at Mission Ranch was that everything floods down there, especially the mouth of the river. That led to again about 30 years ago when Bruno Odello approached Clint and wanted him to buy the Odello property because there's an 86 unit subdivision there. And by the way, when Clint bought Mission Ranch, we extinguished 80 plus units that were going to be built there. We then went and bought the Odello property, which is under the yellow. And you see there's two parcels there with the floodway of the water. The lower parcel, we gave the Big Sur Land Trust. And that was the 86 or 80 some units that were going to be built there. We didn't think was appropriate to build in the floodplain. And not only that, there's an area there where the road kind of loops around, looks like a football. That was called the Blister. And the Odello had been stockpiling dirt there for years to build up their 86 units above the floodplain. That was an impairment when the river flowed across the Odellos. It stopped the river from flowing. Clint hired us and told us to move that out of the floodway, which we did. And then an instance later, we gave the rest of the Odello property, the Big Sur Land Trust, because they could, and why not the county? We said, why'd you give it to Big Sur Land Trust? They were the most likely people that could put grants together that goes beyond the county's ability and then their cost range. So they were able to put the grants together. We worked with Secretary Laird at that time, with the governor's office, now Senator Laird. And you approved that a few weeks ago, called the Carmel River Free. That's basically our blueprint that's been run by those folks, and they've done an excellent job.
Sorry to interrupt. We're up with our 10 minutes, so if we could maybe wrap.
I'll wrap it up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
The two lines on Highway 1 where you see where the flood road, that's where the causeway is going to be built. Before we gave the land to the Big Sur Land Trust, we gave a hunk of that to the county so you'd have room to build a bypass when you built that. So the question is, why would we buy Rancho Canada Villages? First of all, it was an extension of stopping the flooding of the mouth of the valley. Secondly, Nick had purported, and he and I talked about it, the need for employee housing. So when Clint and I looked at the RCB project, which was in limbo when Clint died, or Nick died, we stepped in and tried to redesign the project. We bought it 15 years ago in the middle of an EIR. We thought we were a year or so away from approval until we realized that the community did not want 281 units. We redesigned it to the 130 units as you see in the 2016 application. and the 25 moderate come at that time. And we submitted that, and the board in their wisdom approved that, and the court has affirmed that. Fast forward to what we're doing today. We sat down with the Big Sur with the Carmel Valley Association. We focused on the things we could agree on, not the things that we're disagreeing on. We all agreed there should be additional housing. That's one of the reasons we bought it to begin with. The only difference is we had to pay the bill. So long story short, we've worked out this solution that's in front of you today. You've had a huge staff report that reports it all, but I think some of the history puts it in proper perspective. So we're asking today to try to do what we think the community wants. The yellow is depicted on this map is 400 homes and 270 businesses that come out of the floodplain. When we build the last exhibit that Mary showed, what we call the floodgate, as part of our project. Now, what I want to make clear, that's what we're doing because it's right for the community. It only affects the CSA 50. It's not our water. The water floods through there. We are trying to dam that water with our floodgate. So that isn't any requirement. That's over $1.5 million improvements we're doing for the community. So let's just wrap forward to the three items that it's kind of left to discuss. First one is the stoplight. Stoplight, excuse me. In our discussion with the CVA, there's a lot of displeasure about that light. Both myself and Michael Waxer, who's been with me for almost 40 years, sits on the Carmel Valley Road Committee. There's a lot of discussion whether that's appropriate. We want to do what's right. We'll pay our fair share. When we built Tehama, we put the safe haven lane all the way, the improvements, and we got reimbursed out of our road fees. We would propose that we do the same thing to light. We would like on our improvement plans to show a stoplight or emerging lane and let it go back to the Carmel Valley Association for them to go through a governmental process. Other than that, we're willing to live with the terms, and what the fair share is, we'll work it out, just like we worked out everything else here. The other thing is the 60-inch pipe, and we got to deal with that a little bit. Drainage area 27 isn't a CSA like CSA 50. The county, Lou Bauman, asked me to size that pipe. It was 84 inches in the old EIR. I hired Balanced Hydrology, who's done hydrology on the lagoon, on the Carmel River Free, and us. He sized the pipe at 48 inches from Carmel Valley Road to the school. We added a foot to cover any water from the county. That's how we got a 60-inch pipe. It's been engineered.
Sorry to speed us up, but we're way over our 10-minute time. So if we could wrap up the final comments.
Okay, so in the 60-inch pipe, I was asked by the CAO to install the pipe, which I agreed to, and he would get the county to pay for it. I'll pay whatever my fair share is, and we can determine that. But none of this drainage area 27 water, none of my water goes in that pipe. I'm willing to work that out with the staff in the drainage, the approval of drainage plan. And the last thing is the county road versus the public road. We were looking for some incentive or help so that my people living in the inclusionary housing wasn't burdened with a road fee that anybody else that lives on a private road has to pay. I understand the county's dilemma. Randy and we agreed to disagree. We are hoping we could get some help. We understand there's a lot of resistance. I'll back down on that before I'll delay. We need to get on with this. We've waited long enough. So absent that, I don't know what kind of public comments. I would like to reserve a quick minute or so if there's anything negative, but to my understanding, everybody here today is positive, and that's where I'd like to keep it.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll bring it back to my colleagues for any comments or questions for staff. Oh, good. Okay, 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not the applicant's representative, but I'm the landowner's representative for the project, Anthony Lombardo, and I'll take less than 10 minutes, I hope. This project was my father's vision 20 plus years ago to make this property available for housing. Unfortunately, he died unexpectedly in 2005. Thankfully, Alan Williams and Clint Eastwood shared my father's vision to bring this type of housing to the peninsula. Nobody could have imagined it would have taken 16 years, a lawsuit and an appeal to get this far. And unfortunately, that has added millions and millions of dollars to the cost of this project. I'd like to thank Alan and Clint for their perseverance in bringing my father's vision to a reality. I'd like to thank the county staff and the County Board of Supervisors for standing with Alan and Clint to bring this project forward. And on behalf of my father, Alan and Clint, I'd like to ask three things from the board. First, the project, which has been reduced, as Alan mentioned, by about 50% to get this far, does not need a stoplight. I believe the community, and I'm sure Supervisor Adams is very close to this issue, does not want a stoplight at this location. And a stoplight is not warranted in this location because of this project. The stoplight is a part of the existing Carmel Valley Traffic Improvement Plan, like the stoplight at September Ranch is. And if the county wants a stoplight, it needs to be paid for by the Carmel Valley Traffic Improvement Impact fees, not by this project. Because it's part of the Carmel Valley traffic fees that you collect includes the cost of the stoplight. I would offer that it's probably a condition which should say if necessary, and it would be better to work on an acceleration lane, which I think is what the community wants and really all that this project needs. Second, as Alan mentioned, the former CAO, Lou Bauman, asked Alan and Clint to incorporate a drainage improvement for CSA 27 into the project design. This is not a drainage improvement that is necessitated by this project or that the project will utilize. It's to bring runoff from the north side of Carmel Valley Road to the river. These improvements have nothing to do with this project, and Alan should not be required to pay for it. He's accommodated Dr. Bauman's request to incorporate it into the design of the project, but it needs to be paid for by CSA 27 or by some other source of funding, not an additional cost to this project. There is no nexus whatsoever to include that cost to this project.
Tony, sorry to interrupt. I misunderstood the role that you were here in today. And so this is actually public comment that
Right.
we have. And we've been holding public comment to 1:30 all day today. So I'm going to ask that we
finish one more-
continue.
one
So
more
if you could
paragraph, I'll be
wrap that
done.
up, that'd be great. Thank you.
And thank you. And one last thing in closing, I almost got there. One last thing in closing is, this project has been 16 years in the making. Business as usual isn't going to work very well. So we would like the board to direct the staff to work with Alan and his team and his consultants to get that inclusionary housing approval back as quickly as we can in front of the county, to get that component completed and to get this final map recorded so that we can do this before another decade goes by. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to bring this back to my colleagues on the board for any questions for staff. We'll go out to public comment and then we'll come back for action. Are there any questions from the board? Seeing no hands raised. Supervisor Phillips.
The drainage, the flood control is in the 60-inch pipe. Is that accurate that was something that our former CAO thought was important? And is it true that very little of that is drainage off of this property? It's coming off other property. It's a pass through down to the river.
Thank you, Supervisor Phillips. Eric Lundquist, Director of Housing Community Development. What we have in front of us is a preliminary drainage analysis. And through that preliminary drainage analysis, there has been dispute about what size storm should it be designed to, whether it's a 10-year or 100-year storm. Through the final study, that size will then be determined. We're agreeing to disagree at this point, but through the conditions of approval, that formal size would be dependent upon that future final drainage plan analysis. And additionally, some of the comments that were received were about cost sharing. There is some provision in the draft condition of approval that allows some cost sharing depending on ultimately what that size is to be determined to be.
Okay, and the second question, Madam Chair, is on the traffic signal. We had something in there that said, if a traffic signal, and I understand from what I've read from Carmel Valley Association that they're not, at least they're not in favor of a traffic signal. They'd rather see a acceleration lane or a merge lane. But if a signal is required there, would that benefit not just this property, but also the park district that adjoins this property?
It very well could. In fact, we've suggested that the applicant reach out to the park district to discuss a private sharing agreement where they could each participate on their own about fulfilling their own cost obligations. We did receive a letter from the applicant dated July 12th suggesting that the entire amount of improvement be funded through CV tip. It's staff's suggestion that only the fair share of the development be obligated upon the developer. The other amount of funding, we would have to find opportunity through CV tip or other funding sources to support that. The issue that staff has with that is that fair share is a bit vague. We don't know what that is right now, and it warrants future analysis to determine what the area of benefit is, and then how that cost is going to be spread out. It was originally staff's and now Planning Commission's recommendation that the project fund the entire improvement as the project is modeled based on that improvement being designed and constructed.
Okay, well, I see the concern. I mean, it's fodder for a lawsuit down the road, but all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So just a couple of quick questions as well. As I read the language about the stoplight, I think it does say specifically stoplight or roundabout. So I know that we've got a lot of room to play there, which is just terrific. And my understanding is that should not be anything to hold this project up. But what I did want to ask about was the sewer comment. And I think it was just Tony Lombardo who just said that he feels that the drainage pipe should be completely absorbed by the county, if I'm not mistaken, because it could be runoff from the hills above on the other side of Carmel Valley Road. Is that another thing that you believe we can work out in the details, that disagreement on who funds this is one of those just niggling things that we would be able to approve the project and then get that worked out?
Sure. Mary Israel, the project planner here, can share the condition of approval, which is in 55, that indicates that there is a CSA 50 shall not be responsible or have the obligation to install the floodgate and pump as noted on call out B of sheet 7 of the vesting tentative map. The obligation to install said improvements shall be the responsibility of the applicant unless modified through mutual agreement with the county, CSA 50, and the applicant. We find that this language is acceptable to provide that opportunity should we ultimately agree.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Any other board comments or questions before we head out to the public? We'll move over to public comment. We have a few hands raised. We'll start with Jens Peterson. We'll give you permission to unmute your microphone. And we have 1:30 on the clock for the continuation of the afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe before I begin, may I just inform you that I've got 3 other members of the public sharing my computer who would also like to participate as presenting comments to the board.
Fabulous. We'll let you start and then we'll just have you roll through. And if each person could introduce themselves when they speak, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name's Jens Peterson. I live at 3850 Rio Road, unit number 4. My wife Maggie and I first came here over 50 years ago. We didn't have a chance to play any golf at the newly constructed Rancho Cañada golf course, but we did dream of retiring here. It's a beautiful spot, as you all know. And in 2016, we did purchase a home, and in 2018, we did retire here. I address you today in both my capacity as an individual homeowner and as president of the Arroyo Carmel Homeowners Association, which is a 92-unit development at 3850 Rio Road in Carmel. The Rancho Cañada Village development, as proposed, generates several significant benefits to Arroyo Carmel and the surrounding community. Most importantly, it provides much needed flood control for houses on Rio Road. The flood control improvements outlined in the SFEIR include the proposed floodgate and berm, as has been mentioned, and they will keep floodwaters from cascading down Rio Road. This flood control benefit is immense. My home, along with 400 other homes and 270 businesses, will be saved from the impact of more frequent and larger flooding events, no doubt resulting from increased climate change impacts to our area. I'm concluding by asking the Board of Supervisors to please complete each step that staff has so carefully outlined and certify the Rancho Cañada Village SFEIR today so that this project can move forward. Thank you. I'll turn it over to the next speaker, Madam Chair.
Okay, Chair and Supervisors, I'm Barbara Grace, and I will be reading our late Chairman Lou Gehrig's letter because he cannot be with us today. I am his neighbor in the 100-year floodplain at 3850 Rio Road. Lou and Cindy bought their home, Unit 34, at Arroyo Carmel 16 years ago because they liked the ambience. Lou is concerned because no one today at the county can give him information about lowering the lake here. He asks, and I ask, that you please complete all the steps staff has so carefully outlined and certify the Rancho Cañada Village second final EIR today, so this project can move forward and construction on the Rio Road flood work can start immediately. Thank you.
I'm Margaret Robbins. I bought my home at 3850 Rio Road, number 26, in August of 1981. The seller was so anxious to sell that he took a second trust deed secured by 4 units in Los Angeles rather than all cash. My brokers did not mention the words floodplain, nor did the owner's lender. I did not find out that I lived in the 100-year floodplain until the winter of 1983, when our tennis courts were under 3 feet of water. I finally asked some questions. On county advice, I got an elevation certificate for $150. It said my home was at an elevation of 31.5 feet. I later learned that this meant my home was 31.5 feet above sea level, not 31.5 feet above the floodplain. I submitted with my remarks a picture of the 1995 flood showing 22 inches of flood water in my carport. It's just inches from running into my dining room. Floodwaters did not enter any of the homes in Arroyo Carmel because we lowered the lake in the middle of our units. It has taken 26 years, 4 months, and 17 days to get to a meeting that could finally protect 92 Arroyo Carmel residents against future floods. We met with the applicant on site, saw the flood control elements that the project will provide. It's long past time to study Rancho Cañada Village. I have over 4 feet of paperwork. Please certify this staff report that's so carefully outlined. Certify Rancho Cañada Village second final EIR today so the project can move forward and construction of the Rio Road flood work can start. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Good afternoon to Chair Askew and Supervisors. My name is Michael Robbins, and my wife Margaret and I have lived here for 38 years at the mouth of the valley. I have a bone to pick with you because during the last 18 months, I've had a curious feeling that I don't live with my wife, but with someone called Mrs. Rancho Cañada Village. Because no matter what I ask her to do, watch a new movie, go to dinner, and take a walk, I hear the same words. No, I have a Rancho Cañada Village meeting. Or no, I have to finish my Cañada Village speech. Well, Sorry, I'm waiting for Alan's report on that at Rancho Cananda Village. You got the picture. 2 days ago, I turned 94. But today, I'm asking all of you supervisors to give me a belated birthday present. That is to approve, amend, adopt, give out permits, and certify the Rancho Cananda Village second final EIR with your unanimous vote so this project can move forward and construction can start. This will not only protect the valley from floods, it will give me my wife back. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all for joining us and for your comments this morning. Did we get everyone in the room?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks for organizing a watch party. That sounds like that could be a fun thing for the future board meetings. We'll organize watch parties. Okay, let's continue on with public comment. We have Larry Levine up next, followed by Alex Brandt.
Good afternoon, supervisors. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. We've got 1:30 on the clock ready for you. Thank you.
My name is Larry Levine, and I am the chair of the advisory committee of CSA 50, which has been working for flood control for Mission Fields, the Crossroad area, and the 2 apartment complexes there since the floods of 1995. With Rancho Canada as open property, we are threatened by waters both from an overflowing Carmel River and from a localized storm, which sends rainwater down from the hills north of Carmel Valley Road through these properties. And in both cases, they can overwhelm Rio Road and flow through Rio Road and through both sides of our neighborhoods, as they did in March of 1995. We've accompanied the development of this project for several years now. We've supported it for a long time, based only on looking at the flood control aspects. Another feature is that Alan Williams has indicated that once the project is being implemented, that the flood control elements would be among the first things that would go in, which would provide us the first major protection from flood since 1995. And then, since 1998, of course, supplemented by the major one, the Carmel River Free Project. So we encourage you to approve this project as requested.
Thank you for your comments, Larry. Next up, we have Alex Brandt, followed by Chris Welton.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Thank you for joining us. We have 1:30 on the clock for you today, Alex.
Thank you. My name's Alex Brandt. I live in Carmel Valley. And I'd just like to say, I think it seems like the 145 units from 130 just was added on at the end of this. I think the project, they've gone through this process for a long period of time, and 130 units was what was agreed to in 2016. I don't think that 145 should be agreed to at the 11th hour. They're already eating up a large 70% of the allotted 190 units under the Carmel Valley Master Plan. And I think 145 is just too much, especially for that area. So I think that the project should be approved at 130 units, but not at 145. I think it's too far of a reach for that area, and it eats too much of the Carmel Valley Master Plan unit allotment. Other people in the valley won't be able to use it, as there's only been 19 or 20 left. So I would deny it at 145, and I'd be okay with approval at 130. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments today, Alex. Next up, we have Chris Welton.
Can you hear me?
Thank you for joining us, Chris. We've got 1:30 on the clock for you.
Okay, and if you can hear me, and hopefully, since I'm representing a fairly large constituency, if I go over a little bit, you'll give me a little extra time. Okay, I want to just begin by saying that we appreciate the opportunity to comment on the project, and that we are extremely supportive of the alternative 6B vesting map as described in attachment O. TVA has worked with Rancho Canada applicants since January of this year, meeting regularly and refining the project. Since our initial opposition to the project, we've negotiated and come to agreement on many issues. We now believe that alternative 6B, as described in attachment O, will be a potential model project for affordable housing for the following reasons. The 40 units are designed to meet the housing needs of people who work in the Carmel Valley. While it doesn't target the lowest income categories, it does provide needed housing for moderate and workforce income levels. We believe that the layout and design is well thought out, a high standard, well integrated in the community, and energy efficient. And over the last 7 months, we've established a good positive working relationship with the applicants, and we hope to continue working with them to ensure that all the conditions are met. The project now achieves 28% affordable housing, and with the added townhouses, the overall effect is to increase affordable housing in the project. The flood control issues are addressed, and important, the timeline is to bring completion to the project in less than 5 years. And we think that, that should have a priority to get it online. And we are also very happy that it's all rental housing. And the models, the design, the extraordinary location for an affordable housing project gives individuals of moderate income levels access to all that Carmel Valley has to offer, and that is to transportation, to a grand regional park, to shopping, to schools. And so we ask you to approve this. And the only other point that I would, CVA would ask for, because the applicant has spoken about it at the Planning Commission, is to provide direction to staff to extinguish the 175 visitor serving units west of Majorca designated in the Carmel Valley Master Plan. This will probably require an amendment in the, we hope, near future. So we ask that you act on that piece of it to extinguish those units, since the hotel is not being built for which it was originally, those units were related to, and now that the hotel is gone and the project is there. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Chris, for your comments. And we did let you go a little over there. So next up we have Larry Levine. Did we do Larry? Larry, I think we heard from you already. Is there anyone else for public comment? Anyone in the audience who didn't get a chance to speak in public comment earlier? Thank you. Got one more in the audience here.
Hi, thank you. My name is Michael Waxer. I'm an architect. I've been working with Alan for like 38 years now. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. It's almost a personal reflection. One is that doing adaptive reuse of a golf course, I mean, this is almost one of those textbook cases. And actually, I think this could be written up as a textbook example of how to do community supported adaptive reuse. I want to also, at a personal level, thank the Carmel Valley Association for all the time that we've been meeting together, in particular, Larry Bacon and Priscilla Walton. It's just heartwarming to I think, really bring the community together. It's a great opportunity, and I think it speaks well for everybody, for the project, for the CBA, and also for the greater community. Last comment I wanted to make is you heard a number of comments about the flood control and the need for it. I know during a dry year, it's hard for any of us to remember that we have wet years as well. But there is something to be said here about expediting permits. And I mean that in the friendliest way. There's oftentimes a lot of hurdles to get permits issued. And there is a desire to get the flood improvements in place. There is a desire to get the inclusionary housing up and built as quick as possible. And all of these things will require working closely with the county, and we do hope that there is cooperation so that we can hopefully prevent a flood by getting a grading permit and the final map approved in a quick amount of time. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments. We did have one final hand raised on Zoom, but it seems to have disappeared. We'll do one final call for public comment. See Larry Bacon's hand popped up. Larry, are you able to unmute and share your thoughts with us? We also have Chuck Wing. We have 1:30 on the clock. Chuck, if you'd like to share some
Can
thoughts
you hear
with
me
us.
now?
We can, thank you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please
Okay,
proceed.
my name is Charles Wingy. I have lived, or I have owned a unit at Arroyo Carmel for 45 years, and during that time, we've gone through several major floods, one of which had me moving furniture from the first floor to the second floor because there was so much water. I definitely think this is a very good increase in control of the water. Second issue is in terms of the number of units that are going to be identified as affordable. In the past, they had 130 units, of which 20% was approved. Now, we're talking about 145 units. That's an increase of 15 from the 130. But the affordable is 40. That's an increase of 20 from the past. So therefore, where the 40 units now is 28%. So that's 8 points above the 20% in the past. I think I ask you to approve this property for going forward. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for your comments today. I did see Larry Bacon. Larry, did you have comment you wanted to share with us as well? Larry, if you're there, you'll need to unmute your microphone.
I was just given that option, and can you hear
Wonderful. We can hear you now. We've got 1:30 on the clock for you. Thank you for joining us today.
you? I'm Larry Bacon, resident of Carmel Valley, living about a few miles upriver from the project. And I've been involved, as mentioned, with the discussions, maybe negotiations with the developer that have been very, very productive from the point of view of CVA. I'm a CVA member and member of the Land Use Committee. As you heard, this has been a long and contentious project, but with starting late last year, we managed to sit down with the developer and craft a better project than the old 130 unit project that was formally approved back in 2016. And particularly in this multifaceted project, I would like to emphasize the affordable housing. There was an objection to the increase in units. We need more affordable housing in Carmel Valley. We are a high rent area. We have employees coming to work in this area from distance, and we need more residential locations within our particular area for these employees. So the unusual idea of carving out 5 acres, increasing the units from 25 to 40, marking them for employees, for moderate and workforce level income, making them zero carbon efficient, using the best building standards that can be. We've come out with a much better project that I have to commend for your approval, and also commend staff to move promptly with approvals to bring the affordable housing forward. The affordable housing, by the way, unlike some other projects that you approve, will be right at the beginning of the project. As soon as the infrastructure is in place, the affordable housing can start being constructed, and that's a very positive aspect of the project. So thank you very much. I look for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon, and thank you for your comments. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon and for sharing your comments and weighing in today. We are going to bring it back to the board for action. Any final comments in action? Supervisor Adams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can remember getting a text from Michael Waxer a number of months ago saying, today's a day for celebration. And indeed it was. It was the day that the Court of Appeals had released its ruling. And I think I can say that today is also a day for celebration. I'm just so delighted with the work that has gone on in the last number of months. It's just been incredible. And I look at you, Michael, and I look at you, Alan, and I give thanks to Larry, Bacon, and to Pris, because I think the four of you working with county staff as you have been able to move this project from the murk and the place where it had been stuck for so long forward. And I think it's wonderful. This project is going to provide much needed housing on the Monterey Peninsula. And it's so good that you're moving forward with the plan that will provide more affordable housing units than the original proposal. And I think that it's a true testament to the good intention of the developer that he has kept to the agreement that was reached with the Carmel Valley Association prior to the court's decision. And I really applaud you for that. I want to thank the applicant for moving forward with alternative 6B and for the work that's been done with the Carmel Valley Association in the last 6 months to develop a plan that they support. I know there's been a lot of compromise on both sides. There's no question, but it is a joyful occasion. And so even before I hear from the rest of my colleagues, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the project as presented in our materials today. And I'm very pleased. I don't think this has been rushed at all. I'm happy that we're going to be, I'm delighted to make a motion to certify the SFEIR today as presented.
I'll second that motion, Supervisor Adams.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Supervisor Alejo.
Yeah, I want to thank the developers for bringing this forward. We all know we continue to have a housing crisis in Monterey County and through California. And for me, this just, again, highlights the very long process of what it takes to break ground or even get this far on this kind of housing development in Monterey County. I think it just, California has to be better on how housing could get built more expeditiously and get through the environmental review and the litigation process, because it's the reason why we're in this crisis that we're in today. But nonetheless, I think we're at a point where I think the court has facilitated getting to this point, and even the developer willing to do more by adding the additional units here. But it leaves, so I'm very supportive of this project, but it leaves the question though about the two remaining issues, which is that stoplight and whether the stoplight and the drainage, right? So if there's whether the stoplight could be paid for by the existing road fund of the Carmel Valley, and then second, if the drainage for the residents in the upper areas I don't see there being a proportional share for this development project, but all of the project just seems like it doesn't seem to be as fair here. So the question would be, is there a way to give a proportion of that cost to the project, and perhaps being able to see how we could fund the remaining portion when the drainage is not coming from, it's not all coming from this particular project. So if staff could address those two questions, I think I'd appreciate fleshing that out some more.
Yeah, I would have the same question. I saw Mr. Williams coming up because I understood that almost no water was coming from this project into the drainage, and that Mr. Baumann had made some commitments early on when that was the question I had too.
And hold on, if we could just have staff responses, Supervisor Alejo's first question, and then we'll circle back and have additional comment.
And we do have Public Works Facilities and Parks Director Randy Ishii available for more technical questions. I would only go back to the condition that we have in place that warrants a final engineered plan that then also includes some opportunity for cost sharing.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ishii, are you able to provide additional response?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Chair and Board of Supervisors, Randy Ishii, Director of Public Works, Facilities and Parks. Regarding Supervisor Alejo's question, while there is the Carmel Valley Traffic Impact Fee account, much of that account has already been dedicated to something the Carmel Valley Road Advisory Committee has given direction to move forward on, which is a roundabout at Laurellis Grade and Carmel Valley Road. That said, the developer did base their traffic impact study based on having a traffic signal at that location, and thus recognizing the issues that the community may have with a traffic signal and collectively the traffic issues along Carmel Valley Road. The condition is written such that there's a mechanism, a way for the developer to work with staff and work with other developers, such as the Park District, in order to properly fund whatever the traffic mitigation may be.
Thank you. All right, now we'll continue on with Mr. Williams.
I'm fine with that language. The one last comment I wanted to make was that we've been at this for 15 years and I've had 41 staff people that have come and gone. But I also want to count the current staff. Wendy's the only constant denominator. Well, and Charles and Les there too. And that's to her credit. But the new staff has really got on this plan. They've got with the program. I'm sure we can work out the traffic light situation. Same way on the pipe. I have full, once we understand where the water's coming from, and I'd be glad to work with staff, go back out, take a look at it. It's pretty evident. We'll take care of our fair share of both. Whatever it is, we'll pay our share. Other than that, we're benefiting the community in many ways, and we just like a little help if we can get it. The last issue I just want to concur is that we agree with the Carmel Valley Association that the hotel ought to be removed at some point in time. It's only confusing. It was really meant for this piece of property. If my story would have been a little bit longer, I would have told you about Nick Lombardo got that hotel in that process. There was some humor I couldn't get to. But anyway, we do concur with that too. And the plan I gave you is a lot of the hard work with the CVA and us. And we just wanted you to see it in the plan form instead of electronic form. We will work with the staff. They've been excellent to work with. They've been a good transition through the 51 people to get to who I've got now, and I'm looking forward to working forward and getting this done and over and get a shovel in the ground. Thank you.
Great, thank you for the additional comments. Supervisor Alejo, did that answer your questions?
Yes, I did want to just wrap up by just thinking staff are willing to work. I think the county really sends a message that when we can work out some kind of shared cost on issues such as these two, again, relatively minor issues, when we look at what the investment being put to build this housing and the benefit that it's going to have for Monterey County residents, especially the Carmel Valley area, I just want to commend staff for their willingness to work and have this approach with the developer. But overall, I think this is a success story, something that this board of supervisors could be proud of. But it shows a determination and resiliency from the developer to stick with it, no matter how long and how costly it takes to get this far. But I think we're at a point where I think all sides have come to some consensus on moving this forward. So I just want to commend the inclusionary piece to making sure we are always making housing available for some of our lower and medium income residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Supervisor Phillips, did that answer your question as well?
Yeah, and I did want to say, I wanted to thank the developer and the Carmel Valley Association. You know, we keep saying we need more affordable housing, but how a developer does that with the burdens that we put on them, impact fees and other things, is difficult. And so when staff can work with a developer and reach some agreements and some concessions so that a developer, especially in an area like this where the property's so expensive, can't afford to do the affordable housing, I think is really important. And I do think the way they looked at this, the affordability and having the parcel A thing and kind of designating that may be a good template for how we can do affordable housing in the future, which we haven't really been able to effectively do with much degree of frequency. And everything you hear from within the county and the state is we need more affordable housing, especially workforce housing that they're trying to do here. So I'm happy to support the project.
Great. And Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I echo everybody's support of the project, as well as the thanks to the developer for bringing this project forward. I know it's been a long road. Happened to sit behind the scenes for a lot of those meetings, and I'm appreciative that we're here today at this point. I just want to understand on those two questions, the stoplight and the pipe that were brought up. Is it appropriate for us to include that in the motion as intent? You know, that they will pay their fair share. And you know, that's what I keep hearing that we're going to work towards, but I just didn't hear it as part of the motion. So I want to make sure if someday it gets revisited, it was in this recorded meeting.
Great. And we'll ask Eric to weigh in on that.
Yes, through the chair, Supervisor Lopez, the cost sharing is currently incorporated into the conditions of approval as drafted in your resolution.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Supervisor?
Yeah, to a degree. I think there's just a question of what cost share versus fair share. I know it's minting, you know, we're really splitting hairs here, but as long as we're clear that the board's intent was that is to me fair share, I'm comfortable.
Sheriff, if I might just say that the fair share is incorporated by the law into the concept of cost share. So that's understood.
That helps. Thank you, Les.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. We have a second. Could we just clarify the motion before we ask for a roll call vote?
Thank you, Chair. Just for the record, I think, and staff clued me in on this just to make sure that the record includes everything that's being approved today. There's a resolution amending the text of the Carmel Valley Master Plan. There's a rezone ordinance. There's a resolution approving a combined development permit, and a resolution certifying the second final environmental impact report and adopting a mitigation monitoring and reporting program.
Correct. Supervisor Adams?
Just
maker of
like
the
I said.
motion? Just like you said. Okay, very good. I'll just make a few final comments. I turned my computer off. I'm not sure. Hold on. There we go. I just want to thank everyone on our staff. The kudos that have been flowing to you today have been significant, and we see you. We appreciate the work you're doing. We appreciate the reputation that you're earning for the county as leaders who are able to work with community to move projects forward. So thank you to the developers on this project and those who've been sort of tracking this for so many years. My grandpa worked on projects out on Carmel Valley Road, and I know that those things are generational in nature. So thank you for your diligence and continued perseverance and willingness to partner with the county. To all of the folks who joined us on Zoom and public comment today, and some who sent written communication in, I just want to say thank you for being so willing to fight for the best project possible for our community. I know we've done a lot of talking about how great it is to have additional affordable housing coming into the county. And it's not lost on me. What we're talking about right here are 40 affordable units, but what we're talking about are for workforce housing for people who are earning, significantly more than the county median income. So I'm just going to go on record as saying we still need to remain committed to the very low affordability housing that we desperately need when you look at our RENA numbers. So this is good, but this does not alleviate us of our requirement and need to continue focusing on building housing that our workforce, that our low-paid workforce, those earning less than the county median income, can afford to have, so that we continue to have, teachers and grocery store workers and those who are working in our hospitality industry so that they can live here as well. But we do have a motion, we have a second, we've had public comment, we've had great discussion, and I'll ask for a roll call vote. Thank you.
Supervisor Alejo. Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
Supervisor Lopez.
Aye.
Supervisor Adams. Aye. And Chair Supervisor Root Askew.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries, and we'll let you get on with the project. Thank you. All right. Let's see. I think we're ready to call for a readout from closed session by County Council.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, members of the board. Today in closed session, the Board of Supervisors unanimously approved a number of tentative agreements for 3-year MOUs, a tentative agreement with Unit D, the Public Defender Association, Unit E, the Prosecutors Association, Unit G, the County Council Association, and finally Units M and N of the Probation Association. That concludes my report.
All right. And Les, for anyone who has questions about the details of those, does that get posted somewhere?
I believe they will be posted by Human Resources, yes.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you for the readout on that. And then I will pass the microphone over to Supervisor Mary Adams. We will be adjourning today in memory of Susie Franklin, who I know was a friend to many in our community. And I believe you have some words to share.
Thank you. Susie Franklin was a really good friend of mine, and she lived in Carmel Valley. She would be very proud of our day today. She died on July 5th of this year of a heart attack while traveling with her husband, Charlie, on a road trip in their new Airstream. Susie left an enormous legacy in nonprofits and philanthropy. She left an indelible impression on virtually everyone that she encountered. She was born in Los Angeles. She was an outstanding student. She went to UC Berkeley, pledged to Alpha Epsilon Phi, and took part in some of that school's now famous political demonstrations. She was from that era. After receiving her bachelor's degree at Cal, she earned a master's degree in social work from USC. Susie excelled in fundraising and had a very successful career in the field, culminating in 7 years as the executive director of Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times, one of the country's leading camps for children with cancer and their families. During that time, she led a multi-million-dollar campaign to purchase a permanent site for the organization in the San Jacinto Mountains. Susie provided guidance on many nonprofit boards, including the Los Angeles Children's Museum, the Center for Early Education, and locally the Youth Arts Collective. Susie founded the Franklin Legacy Fund, which provides funding and technical expertise to nonprofits in the Monterey Peninsula and beyond, looking to take the next step in their growth. And she was an active Carmel Valley resident for almost 20 years, including 8 as a participant in the Muffins of Carmel Valley. She fundraised and organized for local organizations and causes, and she hosted countless guests in her home, spent time sharing the family legacy of stories and traditional skills like knitting, for which she had an absolute passion. Susie overcame significant health challenges. That was a very difficult thing for her. She was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's disease while still in her 40s. Yet this never stopped her from doing the things that she loved, including travel, exercise, writing by hand, and even playing the piano. She had an artist's soul, and she was an admired art collector. She loved investing in local artists. I got to know Susie much better than I had on a woman-to-woman educational exchange trip we took together to Cuba. Despite her aforementioned physical challenges, she was really tough to keep up with, especially when she dragged us all to a Cuban baseball game while wearing her beloved Dodgers jersey. I can tell you that is the only thing on which she and I disagreed. But thank you for letting me pay a bit of tribute to someone who deserves so much more than just a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we will adjourn our meeting. Charles, did you want to make any announcement about the possibility of a special meeting later this week?
Certainly, Madam Chair. So everybody's aware, the board is considering calling a special meeting for Friday in light of many of the changes that are occurring with the COVID-19 pandemic, with some of the cases rising, as well as some of the changing guidelines from state and federal authorities. So we will look to have that meeting on Friday at 2:30 or about that time. And so we can have some discussion with the board about the impacts of those changes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all for bearing with us today, and we'll see you possibly on Friday.